My name is Scott Chase. I'm the board chair this year for CASETA. It's been my pleasure, my honor. I want to introduce our great speaker, Katie Robinson-Edwards, who is the curator and executive director of the UMLAUF Sculpture Garden and Museum in Austin. And we've been down there several times. It's a great place. And in front of this hotel is an UMLAUF statue, or work. So, I forgot to put it in the top. Oh, sure. So sometime this weekend, make sure you go look at the big UMLAUF sculpture in the front of the hotel. So Katie, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you to the whole committee and for everybody for being here. It really is an honor to be here at the first CASETA in 2 years, but technically 3, right? If you count, yeah. I'm going to get right into it because I have about 100 slides, but I've also really taken this, I've done a very UMLAUF light today. This is just supposed to be fun, beautiful. It really is an honor to be here. I'm pretty sure my first CASETA talk was 15 years ago. Yep, it's a little scary actually, especially if I look at those old photographs. But it's a real pleasure to be here, and I was especially honored because of this site. The whole talk is geared around the UMLAUF'S that is in front of the Hilton, which many of you probably didn't even see because you might have come in the side door. Did anyone see it when they walked in? Yes. So, well, please, let's go out later and drink some champagne with it or something. It's a magnificent, unique piece, and I would love to talk about it a little bit more, but I want to set a little background for it. This talk isn't really as much about Charles UMLAUF, but I will. So there's the piece out front. This is actually something that the hotel provided a long time ago. I don't have a great photograph of it in situ. I'll work on that. It's very hard to photograph, as you'll notice. This is back when they were taking excellent care of the surroundings. And this is Charles UMLAUF'S reclining muse from about 1982. It's a incredible and huge piece, and it has a special story because not only is it a muse, and UMLAUF did so many muses, but this piece, this sculpture, actually in its scale model was the runner-up to the Spirit of Flight competition that UMLAUF won. So I wanted to move backwards a little bit, showing you the best picture. I took this on a field trip a few years ago of the reclining muse that you have here. There's Mr. UMLAUF. Quick bio of Professor UMLAUF. He was a very poor kid from South Haven, Michigan, moved to Chicago when he was quite young, immediately started taking classes at the Art Institute of Chicago when he was about 11. His mother died when he was 14. His dad seems to have had a little bit of a ne'er-do-well streak and ran off. So the kids really raised themselves, and UMLAUF is a fascinating person because he really did use his artistry to become enormously and internationally successful. It was all he had, and he put his all into it. And so there he is. He moved to Chicago, as I said, didn't leave Chicago until 1941, when he was 31 years old, and that was when he was called down to University of Texas at Austin by their fledgling art department that had been founded in 1938. So he was the first professor of sculpture and life drawing at the University of Texas at Austin. And he was there for 40 years, then retired as professor emeritus, and gave 273 objects to the city of Austin, which is how the UMLAUF Sculpture Garden and Museum was founded, opened in 1991, but is privately run, city-owned, but privately run. That's just an important point sometimes. So there's Professor UMLAUF, and he got a lot of help. One person who saw him, one of his muses was actually a patron, and she actually knew him from the Art Institute of Chicago and heard about him based on a major piece that he had done. And she's the one who told the University of Texas at Austin to hire him, I think. And that woman was Marion Kugler McNay, who, there's of course the McNay in San Antonio, and Marion Kugler McNay there, and she actually gave Umlauf his first big shot. And if you'll come to the Umlauf now, I have a very interesting exhibition up right now about her commissioning a crucifixion from him, and then Umlauf giving her something that she was not expecting, and her saying, "No, thank you." And so the whole exhibition is about rejected commissions, a whole other story. But he ended up making it right with her. There is the McNay with the scale model of the good crucifixion, the aluminum one that she accepted because she actually wanted it to be for Father Baquet's monument, his gravestone at the cemetery nearby. And so there it is at the McNay. That's a scale model. And then we also have a scale model. It's Randy Kerr took this photograph. I didn't identify him, but he likes the real artsy. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that the scale model that we have at the Umlauf is made out of aluminum, and it really has quite a spiritual, bright quality. So that's really the way that Umlauf got here. The piece that Mrs. McNay saw was War Mother, 1931, that Umlauf made in Chicago during, after the invasion of Poland, actually, and he was very sympathetic to the Muses, the mothers, and the people who were left behind in war. And people often ask why he uses such huge hands. Well, first of all, it was a motif and something he picked up from Michelangelo, but also he did say that the hands connote strength, and particularly the women who are left behind, it indicates their strength. And the War Mother has a huge, huge hand. She is made out of cast stone, which is basically concrete. Remember, Umlauf is poor, and sculpture is extremely expensive to make and cast, and that was a problem his whole life. Marble's expensive, and so he knew and learned in Chicago how to mix aggregate. In this case, there's a marble aggregate mixed into the stone that makes it more durable. And I can tell you about that during cocktail hour, because this piece was just vandalized Sunday night. Amazingly, and I'm not going to show pictures because I didn't want to doom scroll, as they say, but amazingly, it's okay. It broke a toe. But that is only a testament to the fact that he made such an incredibly durable material. But repairing it, tilting it upright, gave us a chance to see the inside, so we took advantage of that. So this is War Mother, such an important piece, and if you come to the Umlauf, it's actually right on your line of vision when you walk in, because Umlauf wanted it there. I have several donors and patrons and visitors who want us to move it because they say it's really depressing. But there she is from the front. Look at her enormous hand. And there's the influence, another one of his muses. I'm broadening the sense of the word, certainly Kata-Kollwitz, and also German, as Umlauf's father was, and somebody to whom he very much related, especially during wartime. She was making all kinds of anti-war lithographs and sculptures too. So on the right, you'll see Umlauf's War Mother, but you'll see the very obvious reference to Kata-Kollwitz. Some people walk right in and can see that, but it's fun to point that out. And the really critical Umlauf muse was, of course, his wife, Angeline Allen Umlauf, who was also she was an Art Institute of Chicago student. They got married in 1937. She was 7 years younger than he was. He had his birth year wrong, so I had to do the math there. He was actually born in 1910. They all thought he was born in 1911. So she's a little bit younger. She came from a slightly better off family and gave up a lot to be with him, and also gave up her career in sculpture, as so many women did. And she ended up writing poetry, and you won't be able to read that, but I just included one of her poems. Her whole life she wrote poems, and maybe 90% of them after his passing. He dies in 1994. Angie Umlauf actually died 10 years ago this month in 2022. Got a story about that too. In 2012. So 10 years ago right now, Angie passed away. So it would be really nice to honor her, because she was the backbone, the businesswoman of the whole operation, and incredible, incredible person. And she was honored by him in Poetess, this beautiful, beautiful, this is the study for Poetess that is in a private collection here in Dallas. And It's called Poetess. It is an allegorical figure, based on Angie Umlauf, and she loved this. And we have we have the full size. The version that I just showed you is painted terracotta, and this one is also cast stone. We actually ended up with 2 castings of it. One is made, the aggregate that is in it, in this one is actually red granite, pink sunset granite, to make it slightly pink. The other one that I'm not showing you has some of that white marble in it, like the War Mother does. And there she is from another angle. She's in our garden, also in a prominent position. So absolutely, I would say first and foremost, Umlauf's top muse was his wife, Angeline Allen. And she would have demurred and said, no, she's not, but she certainly was. Very inspirational. And there they are late in life. I had to include that photograph by a longtime Umlauf volunteer, quite late. I said 1991. I actually think it was probably 92 or 93. And as I mentioned, he passed in 1994. And there they are in their garden. So Spirit of Flight. This is Charles Umlauf's Spirit of Flight as seen at the Umlauf Sculpture Garden. It's a bronze version of the scale model. And just take a quick look at it, because I think it's the only time I'll show you this picture of it. It is, of course, an allegorical figure of the concept of flight from when the airport opened. And so Umlauf won the competition that the Dallas Monuments Commission held. Many people submitted. We also know that Charlie Williams submitted and didn't get it. A whole other story about that. But it makes perfect sense, because Dallas actually wanted something that was very figurative, first of all, very proper, and allegorical, something that harkened back to the past. And so supposedly all of the people who submitted to the Monuments Commission were anonymous. That doesn't make sense to me, but they had to submit sketches. They even had to submit maquettes. Umlauf ended up winning first prize in 1959. I think he found out on his birthday maybe in 1959, he found out on his birthday, immediately looked around, wrote to Roman Bronze Works, where he and people like Eveline Sellers had been casting a lot of sculpture. Roman Bronze Works, many of you may know, but if you don't, it was actually the first lost wax Italian-style foundry in the United States, run by some Italians in New York. It was when he wanted to enlarge this sculpture to the grand version at Dallas Love Field, it was prohibitive to cast it at Roman Bronze Works. He could have maybe gotten like one or two of the birds for the $60,000 that was allotted for that project. So he heard from people, and I'm not sure who he heard from, but people who were casting in Italy, which at the time, it was almost like third world ancient medieval casting. When he first got there to Italy in 1959, he went to Pietrasanta. They were still carrying marble with horses and buggies, and carrying marble from Carrara and carrying it into Pietrasanta. He ends up casting there from 1959 through the 80s, and the family actually has continued to cast there. Carla Umlauf, Charles's granddaughter, just returned from a visit to Pietrasanta literally last week. So that gave him the opportunity to cast this full-scale version. Oh, here's some beautiful drawings for it. Studies for the Spirit of Flight. These are some of the things that he submitted in the planning for Spirit of Flight at Dallas Love Field. And there it is at night. This probably is I think this is an older photograph. I'll show you a slightly better one. But anyhow, this was the Spirit of Flight. It has 18 bronze birds. Their wingspans go up to 6 feet. They're enormous. I know most of you have seen it, but go get close to it. They have renovated it and moved it. We'll get into that in just a second, and only for a second. And then he is a 17-foot tall sculpture on a 22-foot plinth. So it's absolutely enormous. It looks so small as you approach it. Spirit of Flight, there he is in Pietrasanta working on it. I just love these old photographs that he obviously very staged. So what he's working on here, Charles Umlauf is in Pietrasanta, Italy for his first time working on the scale, not the scale model, the full-size version in clay. It's going to be in clay before they enrobe it and end up making a casting of it and turning it into bronze. And there's that full-size picture of it, so you can see how big it is compared to him. Not sure, Umlauf wasn't huge, but he had huge hands, and that sculpture positively dwarfs him. And as I mentioned, Dallas, they put a lot of money into renovating Spirit of Flight. They did this several years ago. We had an opportunity, including some people in this room and in this photograph, we had an opportunity to visit it when it was at the studio of Michael Van Enter up here being conserved. It had been years and years. Umlauf had tried some lame conserving, but it was just so heartwarming that Dallas cared about it so much, and Dallas Public Art, that they took it on. So they conserved it, so we had an opportunity to study this sculpture lying down, and yes, that head is enormous. It's just something you never, ever get to see. You also realize, like Michelangelo, when he makes these sculptures, he knows you're going to look at them from far away, so they have some extreme features and faces and eyebrows and real extreme hair so that it can be seen in the bright sun. And then that was really exciting to see the base up close in the studio there. And you can see that it says, Charles Umlauf, 1960, Fonderia Vignali I Tomasi Pietrasanta, Italia. That's the same place that your muse out here was cast. And so when you go look at it, be careful, walk up closely, but you can see the foundry stamp on it. It's not quite this prominent. And there, we came up for the celebration when they reinstalled it and harnessed the Spirit of Flight back up on a beautiful, beautiful day and put it back in the new, completely renovated fountain. Very exciting. And there it is, as it stands today. And there it is with all the hydraulics of the fountain working in. Fountains are terrible things. They're terrible for sculptures. They're terrible to work on and to make. And they redid the entire thing. So, to recap, Spirit of Flight was the winner of the competition for Dallas Love Field. As I said, there were many, many people who submitted artworks to it, and they were allegedly anonymous. Umlauf actually submitted 2 full submissions. So one was Spirit of Flight, and the other one was a proposal that we don't have, but he called it The Seasons, and it included 4 reclining muses, and each one represented a season. He won second place as well. So if you, I feel like there's a little underhandedness, but it's too suspicious. But at our garden, that since Umlauf was, he cited the Spirit of Flight where it's currently located in Austin at Umlauf Sculpture Garden, and just to the left of it you see the scale model of the reclining muse, because he very proudly knows that these made his career. So War Mother got him to Texas, made his career, it's on axis, then you look to the right, and then you see the most important pieces that made him internationally famous. Hopping ahead quite a bit, we're moving to 1962. So Umlauf is at University of Texas. They never commissioned they just ignored him the whole time. He'd been there since 1941. Then he starts getting these major commissions like Dallas Love Field and Mrs. McNay, and he goes back to Chicago and puts another head at Merchandise Mart. And they finally kind of scratch their heads and they decide they need to commission some pieces from him. So they do, and they commission quite a few, including 3 muses. And there you see them in their original sighting, the 3 muses of the original 7 mythical muses. And I don't know which 3 these are. They're just titled Muse 1, Muse 2, and Muse 3. So terrible photograph, but you get the idea that this is around the 1960s. And they were in what's now, or what became called, it's now the undergraduate library, but Flan Academic Center. And they were in the courtyard there. And so all of them were in the courtyard there from about I think they were installed in 63 actually, until they were moved because they were moved to Centennial Park for the 100th anniversary of the University of Texas, and they were moved to Centennial Park across from the now defunct Irwin Center. And there was a huge park celebrating their centennial of the university in 1985, and they were all placed there. And I don't actually have, this is a photograph that it's obviously I borrowed from somewhere, because this is what they look like at some point from after 1985 when they were installed. Beautiful, beautiful trees around there, and they probably got a little less attention where they were, but the idea was to give them a whole new life. When the university later built the Dell Medical Center a few years ago, they needed to move these again. And so that's when I had just arrived at our museum, and we got involved and made them move them to us. And our argument, and you can see them in the parking lot at the UMLAUF, our argument is that they had been defaced and vandalized. So those are my photographs, probably from 2014. It was actually the first thing I did when I got to the UMLAUF. And if you look, you can see, and I'll show you some details, you see how she has lipstick on? And she has lipstick on, and she has her toenails painted, and she has her toenails painted. So all of them had been vandalized, and we gave them we basically just took it off. We didn't have the ability to completely reconserve them, but they look great now. So we gave them a very light conservation treatment because it would have been tens of thousands of dollars to do what needed to be done. And plus, we also really appreciate the verdigris color. We just wanted to get the makeup off of them. And then there's some details in case you weren't able to see it pretty prominently. She looks very tart-like there. And then look at those toenails. And it's funny, I had just enough time when I got here to put a little makeup on in her honor. So I was thinking about her. But I need it. She doesn't. So so this was our argument to University of Texas for why we needed to have these pieces moved to us. And I'm going to just keep scooting along because I know we're hitting time. You can bring me the hook if you need. So I think I have just a few minutes. So there's some more details of the Muses. It's of course always sad when sculpture is vandalized, but we tried. Fortunately, bronze is pretty durable, and apparently that War Mother is highly durable. So it was a big production, and again, I just love looking at these pictures. This is Vault Fine Art Services moving them on the coldest day in February in 2014, and moving them to the UMLAUF, and they do belong to the university. They do not belong to the UMLAUF Sculpture Garden and Museum, and if the university wants them back, they're going to have to move them back. And there she is. It's just so wonderful to see them treated like people, all harnessed up and lovingly. She's got with a harness on her neck. And there they are as installed at the UMLAUF Sculpture Garden right now, relatively well cleaned up. They don't look great, but they look pretty. I mean, the siding is not the best, but I think it's pretty good for now. Very happy to have them. There they are, Muse 1, Muse 2, and Muse 3. And also just to, we also have a Muse head. It's actually a detail head of Muse, I think it's Muse 2. You can probably read that better than I can. And we actually use that to demonstrate the thinness of the bronze, and that's on our terrace. So it just gives you an example, an opportunity to see all the different ways that things you can do with bronze and the things you can do with the sculpture. I just wanted to mention, going back in time a little bit, because I wanted to get through the Muses. UMLAUF had a lot of models in the 1940s and 1950s that he named, and we don't know who they are, we don't know where they are. Occasionally someone will show up, but my very favorite was Dora, and this is a polychrome terracotta that's actually belongs to the museum in the city of Austin, and it's probably one of my all-time favorite sculptures. And we had an exhibition at the Austin Bergstrom Airport once, and got this is my iPhone photograph, but got to exhibit her there, which was magnificent. And also, there's just a little flyer for that exhibition. But I also want to put in a plug for CASETA, because this was actually done by Ray Pleasant. She came down one day for Family Day. Ray Pleasant was actually the recipient of a CASETA scholarship, and she's a wonderful artist. And I don't know where she is now. I think she's up in this area. I know she used to work for Sue Canterbury at one point, but she took Dora and made her a hero and did a book about Dora, and a whole children's book about that. And this is all I have, I don't have the copy of it. And UMLAUF'S most famous muse. We're going to go through Farah pretty quickly, but if you don't know, she was Charles UMLAUF'S student from 1964 to 1966 before she got pulled off to Hollywood. And we have a number of drawings, and there are probably about 14 certified Farrah Fawcett sculptures, and then every other nude people insist is Farrah, even if it was made in 1950. It's got to be, and we just, yes, absolutely, that's her for sure. But she certainly did inspire, as a muse, she certainly did inspire a lot of the features of Umlauf's later work. I'm just whipped through some of these. She became friends with Umlauf and his wife. She spent a lot of time there. She actually visited him in 1994, right before he passed away. She would come to the garden. She would get, call on the phone all the time. And he did and she also made her own artwork, and he cast it for her in Italy, because she didn't want to spend a lot of money on casting, so she would just ship them to Austin, and he would send them on the boat to Pietrasanta and cast her works for her. This is my favorite terracotta sculpture. This does not exist in bronze, that Umlauf made of her. Probably had to be 67. He dates it earlier, but he couldn't have known her at that point. And then that's one of the most famous, terrible picture, but one of the most famous sculptures by Charles Umlauf of Farrah with the hair. And I just wanted you to see, she has a lot of Umlaufs. I don't think you see the Umlaufs in this picture, but you see Andy Warhol's painting of her that became hotly contested later after she passed away. But here in Farrah's anteroom, and thank you, Sylvia Dorsey of Houston provided these to me, that's War Mother. Farrah was a Catholic and collected, she had 30 Umlauf sculptures. So she had War Mother, she came to visit Umlauf with her mother, that's Farrah's mother. And this is a sculpture by Farrah Fawcett. So I wanted to show that, it goes both ways, that she was very influenced by him and she was quite talented. Jumping ahead, here we are with a group visiting this sculpture a little while ago. So now you can understand that when the Lincoln, it was a Radisson at that time, came to Charles Umlauf, he was thrilled in the early 80s to be able to create this, because he'd never made the full-scale version of what was one of the seasons. I still don't know what season she would be, but this was the runner-up to Spirit of Flight. So how fitting is it that it's here in Dallas in full-size version? And these are just, I couldn't resist putting in a whole, look at those eyes. These are all the clay models. Look at the hair. This is all the clay preparatory work before it was cast. And so all of these are the clays that are in Pietrasanta, where he did cast this one. He was also casting in Milan, but not for this. Absolutely beautiful photographs. Look at those toes. And this is not as great, but this photograph was taken in Italy after it was cast, before it was shipped over here. And there he is in this nice show photograph. Again, a little bit, giving you a little bit of sense of the scale. And I wanted to finish with this. I have a lot more, but if I can just take 3 minutes. Some CASETA members and very important people related to the board helped us, the Umlauf, conserve a Farrah Fawcett head that we had that was badly abraded, that was distracting, and we were able to do that this spring thanks to their generosity, so a big shout out. And took it to Vault Fine Art Services and fixed the Farrah. It was gifted to us by the family, and I think probably, nothing against them, but I think they gifted it to us because they couldn't sell it because they knew that it had some damage. So we were able to have it repaired. We're so happy to have it. You can see the before and after. And she looks beautiful again. And there she is from the side. Love the hair. And think about that when they see Muse. And there she is completely. So thank you for that. And I just want to, real quickly, before you kick me off the stage, because I know you're going to be interested in this, I just want to say that Umlauf also is a muse and an inspiration to artists too. And one of the things that you do when you have a single artist museum, and also when you want to show that sculpture did not stop in its tracks with bronze sculpture in 1994 when Umlauf died, you want to show people who paid homage to him, sometimes critically, sometimes positively. And one of these people is Ryan Hawk, who took the idea of the Spirit of Flight. This is not going to be to your liking, and that's okay. It's a little bit ahead of what CASETA does, but one of the things that Ryan was pointing out was that what we call the heteronormativity of UMLAUF'S work, meaning that it's all men, women, all beautiful women. Ryan happens to be a queer artist. So we made a room, and he made a beautiful video in response to the UMLAUF with a real person acting in the position of the spirit of flight and then engaging in this drip coming over. And if it seems kind of intense, it is. I know it's new, but it was really a very smart piece of work also because UMLAUF was always about tactility, and Ryan took the tactility to a new level. And there's just some stills from that. So it's always important to provide an opportunity for UMLAUF himself to become a muse of types and have people respond to him. Ryan certainly liked the work. That's some of what's called GAC. It's a bubbly material. There's a detail of it. There's a detail of the guy. It was a real video of a real person. And also, that same time, we had an artist named Grace Lee Lawrence respond to UMLAUF'S work, and she was really interested in the idea of the muses, the female, the fecundity, the fertility. So she just turned it into fruits and fountains, and she knew that UMLAUF had worked in a lot of fountains. So there she is installing. And this one, this is my photograph, but this is UMLAUF'S Kiss, a response to Rodin's in the middle of the island there. And this is a pear and a banana in the same pose as the lovers in the kiss. And there's Grace Lee's picture. So she just has them mimic, and it took forever to get that in. She has them mimic that pose. It kind of it's multivalent, but a wonderful, wonderful piece. And there's a fountain that actually responds to UMLAUF'S lovers. So these are two lovers very, very close together. So Grace Lee took her two pairs and cleaved them like that, very close together. And there's a slightly close, you can see the lovers in the back. And there's Grace Lee's piece in a working fountain. And my favorite of all time, Grace Lee made a reclining nude muse, and she did it with a double-headed pineapple and installed it in a fountain, and I will end there. Thank you very much.